Preparing for the UPSC Civil Services exam requires you to digest 200 years of modern Indian history. The sheer volume of dates, viceroys, and legislative acts can easily blur into an unreadable mess without a system. This quadrant chart plots the volume of study material against actual exam weight. Modern history sits aggressively high in the top right. This specific window from 1757 to 1947 pulls between 4 and 7 questions in almost every prelims paper, outpacing ancient and medieval history combined. Many aspirants treat this syllabus as a linear, passive story. That approach typically results in a collection of disconnected dates that fail to form a coherent picture. This lack of structure leads to failures in the mains. If you cannot connect early colonial taxation to later peasant unrest, you will struggle to provide the analytical depth the examiners expect. A strategic timeline allows you to allocate study hours for maximum ROI across both prelims and mains. Start by looking at the standard advice. Aspirants are handed a towering stack of required reading, ranging from slim, foundational NCERT books to dense academic texts. The confusion comes from matching these books to specific exam hurdles. A student needs rapid factual recall for the prelims, but deep argumentative frameworks for the mains. Every book demands a massive time investment. Spending 8 weeks on a narrative textbook is inefficient if the exam is months away and you primarily need bullet points. Conquering this subject requires a curated, concentric resource strategy plotted against a master timeline. To build that architecture, look at this timeline matrix on an A3 canvas. The x-axis runs from 1757 to 1947. We build the top lane, tracking the Indian National Congress through 4 phases: moderates, extremists, Gandhian mass politics, and towards independence. Studying these phases in isolation is insufficient. The UPSC tests parallel tracks underneath. We add 3 lanes: economic policy, socio-religious reform, and tribal revolts. The framework connects the dots. See how the 1793 permanent settlement leads directly to the 1855 Santhal Hul Rebellion. This matrix requires intense upfront effort, but drastically reduces prelims revision time by converting hundreds of pages into one examinable visual memory. Early moderate politics focused on petitions and constitutional arguments. These leaders spoke directly to English liberals, using memorandums and speeches. The Swadeshi movement and extremist leaders shifted the strategy. They moved away from elite petitioning, pushing mass politics and economic boycotts into the public sphere. This ultimately evolved into mass civil disobedience, mobilizing students, peasants, and workers under a single political banner. Resistance was not a monopoly of the educated middle class. Ignoring parallel movements like the Indigo Revolt or tribal uprisings results in lost marks. Understanding the cause and effect across these parallel lanes provides the analytical depth required for the mains. To populate your timeline, we use a resource strategy built around 3 concentric circles. The inner circle is Class 8 NCERTs, building the baseline architecture for colonialism and social change. You can finish these in a week, but they lack the depth needed for a high-scoring mains answer. The middle circle is Bipin Chandra's narrative textbook. This is necessary for the argumentative lens required in mains and essays. The trade-off is significant. It requires 5 weeks of reading and is poorly suited for quick factual retrieval before the prelims. The Spectrum Guide is the alternative for the middle circle. It provides instant access to bullet points and facts. Spectrum has a high ROI for prelims, but lacks the historiographical nuance needed to explain complex theories like the economic drain. The outer circle includes Sumit Sarkar's work and Class 12 NCERTs. These are strictly for critical historiography and deep analysis of past questions. Avoid starting with the outer circle. It is a severe time drain and is reserved for advanced mains preparation. No single book works for all stages of the exam. Aspirants must layer them intentionally based on their current phase of preparation. A study plan works only if it matches your time constraints. This flowchart routes your strategy based on months left. Path A is for beginners with over a year. You execute the full strategy, starting with NCERT, moving to Bipin Chandra, and finishing with Spectrum. This requires 12 weeks of strict discipline, dedicated solely to modern history. Path B is for the time-poor optimizer, with less than 4 months left. You skip the narrative textbooks and default strictly to the master timeline, Spectrum, and the last 10 years of previous questions. You abandon narrative beauty to secure the factual baseline necessary to survive the prelims cutoff. Success in the UPSC requires conscious trade-offs based on the time you have left. Behind the strategic matrices and book lists is the story of how an extractive colonial economy was systematically dismantled. The evolution of these mass movements shows the sheer scale of the freedom struggle's climax. Decades of constitutional bargaining and resistance resulted in the birth of a modern nation-state. The UPSC rewards aspirants who read history as a connected argument rather than a disconnected calendar. Build your 5-lane timeline, pick the resource path that matches your schedule, and let the matrix do the heavy lifting for your exam.